Hello, my name is Andrew.
Hello, my name is Rick. I'm interviewing Andrew for his end of year research portfolio. So are we ready to begin? Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. So just starting off, I wanted to ask, was this piece directly inspired from a previous work? How is this project related to previous projects? And what have you learned from the past?
Yes, firstly, it is inspired and it's kind of transferred from a work that I did last year with this sort of similar apologies,
Take it on.
the stutter. A sort of end goal, I suppose.
Mhm. Yeah, like an objective?
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, kind of. They ended up looking rather similar,
Mhm.
but the last one was inspired by graffiti, specifically graffiti around Dublin. I traveled around different parts of Dublin, kind of gathered examples, but
By examples, you mean like drawings or studies of places?
I would visit different locations of significance, and I would just kind of see what was left there, what people had left behind, and I was thinking kind of what kind of people would leave these behind. Thankfully, it was mostly just nonsense, which I found rather entertaining. But yeah, the sort of format that was used was heavily inspired what I did
In that project?
in the last semester,
Mm-hmm.
but it also was carried on from Studio Plus
Mm-hmm.
directly before it. I ended the first semester of Studio Plus. I made a sort of Easter egg hunt for my end of year project, which ended up being very, very tiresome, and I had no intention of going back to something like that ever again, but lo and behold, it's just something I do enjoy doing. I took over 200 sticky notes and placed them in clusters or just points of interest across the entire building for people to find. And that seemed to have garnered a positive reaction, so that did stick with me. No pun intended. But
Yeah,
so I continued with that.
Yeah. Sorry, I never realised, I never made the connection before to the sticky notes and the way that you've installed your work, as in like
Yeah.
on the wall in clusters.
There was it was in clusters primarily. Very seldom were they below 2 or 3 together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they would overlap, meaning I could highlight the bits that I liked more than others.
Mm-hmm.
Each piece was an individual character design from a game that I liked, which is now unfortunately completely defunct. So it's a shame really, but it was also very tiresome.
So, I hear that you draw a lot from video games and also character studies, and you're interested in places where people make art and graffiti. I also want to know what else like allows you to develop your ideas, and what else brings you inspiration, really.
Well, the primary sort of the spine of the different sorts of inspiration would come from like established, video games. There would be I would visit the different locations and just kind of see who was floating around there. I visited Meath Street quite a bit last year, which in itself had quite a lot of characters. Very, very funny people, but I would never want to run into them again, especially people you'd avoid in a dark alley. There was lots of graffiti there, but I did manage to run into one person who was slightly sane, but he kind of put a new perspective on what I thought about the graffiti there, because obviously I quite enjoy it, but he was quite the opposite. He really hated it. He didn't run a shop himself, but a close friend of his did. She had recently got her windows fixed up, and the shutters, they were all completely repainted. But then overnight, some idiot spray painted a bunch of it, and because it just happened to have lots of holes in it, it worked like a stencil. So the next day, the window was completely covered in graffiti, which, obviously that annoyed everyone involved. But there were smaller, less offensive, I suppose, pieces of work. I know in the last slide of the portfolio, which I took a photo from one of the top stories of NCAD, which looks out towards it looks directly down on Meath Street, and I actually saw some of the graffiti that I noted last semester. It's still there and very much highlighted there. So I thought that was an interesting thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of other inspirations, I'm the music I listen to would be, I think it would end up actually being the primary sort of backbone to each of the individual pieces that make up this larger installment.
Mm-hmm.
Each song was carefully picked. It was one that is important to me in whatever manner, and I just picked what is most important to me about that and see if I could amplify that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense. So maybe this brings us on to our next question. Your project is titled Sense of Self, or Essence of Self. So you're a lot in this project as a person, and I was wondering, how does this work relate to your own life and your own context?
Well, this whole project started with my granddad, and I wanted to sort of make something that would make something that I could guarantee would be not proud of, but something that he would actually enjoy as a person. Unfortunately, it was meant to be a surprise for him, but unfortunately, I couldn't actually pin down what he liked in terms of paintings. It started with studies from postcards and things like that, because the only painting I could pin down without raising suspicion was a small study of a dog from a postcard, which was was taken and then blown up onto a slightly larger, canvas, and then framed, and he bought it just in the one of the country roads of England, and he's not really one for visual arts, so that was an anomaly, really. I asked my mother, my aunts, my uncle. Legitimately, nobody could point down what he liked in terms of visual art. He's much more of a musician. But that want to inspire him, or that sort of want was sort of taken from several years back when I was in secondary school. He asked each of the grandkids, would you like to make a painting, and we'll have it up in the house? So naturally, I obliged, but I made a painting using sort of, at that point, experimental sort of techniques, things that I hadn't really mastered yet. I was happy enough with the piece to give to him, but when I handed it to him, he sort of was like, well, that's not quite my thing, but it's still very good. And he placed it alongside everyone else's, and while I know that he's from like central London, he's pushing 80, so very, very posh, polite sort of person. He would never tell you out flat that he just didn't like something. But that's about as close as a confession as I'm ever going to get. So I took that for what it was, and I thought, can I make something that he'd really like? That's where that came from. But as I did these studies, I realized how much I actually hated it. So I moved from that thought began to ruminate, and I thought to myself more and more, just I ended up applying myself more and more to this as I did these paintings almost absent-mindedly, and realized these would be much, much better if I just did them for myself. And I thought, well, what would be something to study then? And I thought the music I was listening to at that very moment, that would be a good jumping point, and I liked that. So I continued on with that, and after a few months of doing that, I told him like that was meant to be a surprise, and specifically for him. And while he was flattered, he actually couldn't even tell me what paintings or artworks, painters that he liked. Like, again, this was a complete anomaly. He couldn't even give me a clear answer as to what he liked. So at least that makes two of us then. So that was the loan on that one.
So you really moved from trying to make work for someone else to making work for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I realized that, like, making something that was for someone else who didn't even really like the subject, it prioritized something that I knew wouldn't really turn out well compared to the other paintings, which I think came out a lot better, because I turned into something that I personally really enjoyed, which I then began to amplify by adding more symbolism for myself, which kind of reared its head in the form of the cutout of scrap material, which was then placed in front of the rest of the works to really sort of draw the eye into the center. And I think that in particular came out quite nicely.
Okay, I'm
So-
glad. Yeah, you should be proud of yourself.
Okay.
So maybe now that we're kind of on the topic of how you constructed the final piece, you've mentioned the cutout of the like man figure, which is
Yeah.
you, that's placed superimposed onto the paintings. Could we speak maybe a little bit about the paint that you used? Is there any significance around the choices with that?
While there isn't a particularly in-depth reason as to why I chose the particular paints, a lot of it was just because it just happened to be in my possession beforehand, because I do paint in my own time, but they were very much a sort of cheap baby's first acrylic set. So I would just use those, and I wasn't so precious about them. So with that, I managed to get some really strong use of color out of, say, the more important or primary sets. The rest I use more for blending.
Okay. Thank you. So then maybe while you were making these paintings, you mentioned that music plays a big role in your process. I was wondering what genres in particular you were listening to while you were making your paintings.
I'm a bit of a perhaps not too weird of a case where I just don't have a particular genre that I would just sit and listen to. I'm not a sort of a metalhead. I'm not a country sing, that kind of thing. Very much of a, if it is pleasing, I just would listen to it over and over. Sometimes they would have more significance than others. Something like 01, an album from someone who does a lot of electronic music. That one was significant because it basically got me through my PLC course. That and another album which was Swing, Electro Swing, that came out at around the same time. So I would just blast them in the bus in the mornings and the evenings, just to sort of just get me through the day, really.
Yeah.
But while that exact same time, it was just whatever was again just handy to me. There was no real connection. They're all outliers. Unfortunately, there's no real clean answer to that question.
In a way, I think there is. It's like you enjoy this music, and it just naturally makes its way into your practice, right?
Yeah. I suppose that sort of eclectic taste in music shows very clearly in the sort of the way the paintings come together, the colors, the shapes that I would repeat and use all the time. There's jazz music, there's electro swing, there's just anything really that fits the bill, and that works for me.
Yeah, maybe just slightly going off topic very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
There's in your portfolio, there's a few slides I think of lyrics as well that you found meaningful.
Yeah, There is some from Jeff Lynne, Electric Light Orchestra. There is some from Miracle Musical, I believe, and there is one from a song Ad Infinitum, a pun based off of a very ad-centered person who I won't get into because I could talk all day about that. Obsessed with that particular character, but that in itself is considered nerdcore, I believe. So it's very much its own thing.
You mentioned like recurring symbols and motifs in your work that are inspired by music. I noticed that there's a lot of skulls in your work. I was wondering, what does that particular motif mean to you?
A part of me wants to answer with some more, in-depth sort of very artsy answer, but a lot of it comes just from the fact that I really find that motif, things like skulls, skeletons, that motif I find is very interesting and often finds its way into my work, outside, inside of projects like this. But I feel like putting something like a skull or a skeleton in the form of these more colorful, vibrant paintings, I feel like is quite an interesting contrast. Excuse me. So I feel like they're quite at home with the again, the very eclectic sort of jumble of what I have. So
I was also wondering, at what point do you consider your paintings done? How do you know when to stop?
A lot of it is just add and add and add until I can't add anything else without it being reductive from what I have established. Or sometimes I will just have an accidental stroke of genius and when, I cannot ruin this. This has to stay where it is. So, of course, very rarely, but if more or less, if I make something and I can't fit anything else into it, then it's done. Or if it mirrors the essence of what I'm listening to, if it's a slower song with more instrumental, or then there would be lyrics, then that would be a lot calmer, a lot more relaxed in terms of what I have shown.
Yeah, minimal maybe.
A bit more, minimal.
Could you speak a little bit about some of the artists that interest you and inform your work?
Yeah, I am a fan of the work of Basquiat. While my work cannot really compare to his, but I love his use of color, the line, very expressive, and something I can only really mimic. But I've been looking at his work since first year, so a lot of his self-portraits are they've sort of stuck with me. Then my work has been likened to that of Sam Kyo. One of his works that I like in particular, the unicorn is killed and brought to the castle cartoon.
What do you like about it?
I don't know, like, looking at it from a distance, there's you can sort of see that it's very, I don't think washed is the right word, but it's paler to the work of Basquiat, but when you look closer, you can see there are lots, like it is made up of lots of smaller illustrations, which I find fascinating. Um,
Similar to your work, the way he layers as well.
Yeah, his use of layering really brings a sort of three-dimensional aspect to the work, which again I do find very interesting. I was not aware of his work until someone suggested it and brought it to my attention. But after doing some research on my own afterwards, I find it. I know exactly what they meant. Excuse me. All of the smaller pieces, well, actually, all of the pieces are held together with masking tape on this particular piece, which was quite similar to my my crit, but that unfortunately was not intentional. That was because I was extremely underprepared for what was about to be asked of me. I have a third artist that I was looking at, which is Paula Lehmann, a contemporary painter who works with oils primarily. Lots of work centering around people, portraits, self-portraits, and she does actually work in NCAD as well. I've worked with her for several years now, and she really has steered a lot of my work. So there was that very, very direct influence on my work going forward from that point. So it was wonderful working with that sort of environment.
Okay, thank you. So then lastly, since we're also on the topic of like standalone pieces of work or their artists, I was wondering, do you have a favourite piece of your own work and why?
I do. It's a sort of greenish piece with a skeleton playing a piano surrounded by other skeletons enjoying the music, and it is named Remains of the Day, inspired by a song of the same name. Each piece of work is, of course, titled after the work it's inspired by. So Remains of the Day was a song featured about halfway through the runtime of Corpse Bride, directed by, produced by Tim Burton, and it's a sort of jazzy song, heavy in piano, and of course it is performed by a band of skeletons, entire jazz band of skeletons, which, despite being extremely out of it's a few centuries early for what is to be shown, but I'm not complaining. I really enjoyed the song, so that just happened to be one that I think turned out very well.
Great. And then maybe a note or two about what you imagine your future to be like, or the future of your practice. What kind of work would you like to make?
The future of my work, honestly, probably doesn't involve sculptural work too often. I went into sculpture thinking I could learn how to do things like that, different techniques, which I certainly have, but it seems to be a course that was more for people who already kind of knew what they were doing. Because my thought process after the first year kind of common entry course was, I can draw okay. I'm happy enough with my drawing skills. I can paint. I'm happy enough with my painting skills, but my sculptural pieces are lacking, I thought at that point. And in terms of final pieces, perhaps that still remains, but I was put very much out of my depth. So I think my future in art, I think, probably steering in the direction of illustration. I would love to make my own sort of graphic novels, comic book online, like an online series. I think that's where my strength lies. So thankfully, I think I'll begin that process over the summer break.
Okay,
I would love to start that.
Amazing. That's great to hear. Perfect. Thank you for chatting to me, Andrew. And
it's been a pleasure.
Also, well done on the past few years of your education. Yeah?
Thank you.
All right, excited for your degree show now.
Yeah.